All right, hi there folks. So I'm going to be going through ordered pairs today, both the teacher dashboard and a little bit of feedback in terms of ordered pairs, but in 3 different ways that you can ask for them. This first slide has the easiest way to ask for the information, the easiest to code. The others are not that much harder, but definitely a different strategy. The reason that this one is easier is because the X coordinate is broken up and entered in a different spot for the student than the spot where they enter the Y coordinate for that point. So that makes the coding a bit easier. When you go to either this example or the following example, students are putting their answers in with that point format of X comma Y. And so it's all tied in together. And the computer needs to look in that one spot for both answers, and that can, that just creates a little bit more work in terms of CL. So let's take a look at the first example. We have a graph, so let's start off by read only true for that. And I'm going to put that on all 3 examples right now so that we don't forget about it. Again, read only true is good for telling the computer, don't worry about this component because you can just mark it correct. The student is not interacting with it. Down here in the table, we want to add CL for point A. A is asked for first, and the X value is going to go here, which would be 5, and the Y value 2 is going to go here. So this cell right here is in row 1, column 2. So 1, 2 has to be a value of 5. So we're going to go right into a check. And this component, cell numeric value of, what did I just say, 1, 2, has to be 5. And this cell numeric value for the one beside it, which would be 1, 3, is going to need to be 2. And then we'll set up the next one, but I think I need to look back just to make sure that I know what I'm doing here. This will be the next row down, so 2, 2 needs to be 0. And this cell numeric value of 2, 3, I think is -3. Let's double check those. 0, -3, 0, -3. All right. So, oops. Going back to the CL, we need to say that if it passes the check that we want to mark that correct with a correct sync and the word check in there to pull back on those correct answers, then it puts that in by saying, all right, we can mark that with a check mark on the teacher dashboard. So 5, 2, 0, and -3 gives that check mark that we're hoping for up here. We can add in a little bit of student feedback using a note to display a message here. And I'll sort of do it the really fast way. Let's call it feedback 1. This is table 1. And in the CL, just to give something really quick, we'll say we're going to do a content sync and when the student is correct. So when their table 1 dot script that we wrote for the check, when that check passes and it's correct, then maybe we want to say great job. And otherwise say nothing. So whether they're getting it wrong or they haven't filled it in or whatever, it's not going to say anything until everything in the table is correct, which probably isn't the best feedback that we could give. This one's all about just sort of how do we do it? And there's so many different ways to give feedback that I've done that in a different video or multiple different videos. So the point is 5, 2 and 0, -3. So we get that message of great job. The student doesn't have to press a button. That would be something that a lot of times we want to ask the student to press a button so that we know when they're done with the table. Because if I say something like, otherwise try again, that's just if it's not correct. So watch right at the very beginning. Try again shows up and they haven't even started. And even if they start off with things that are correct, it keeps saying try again because it's waiting until it's correct to give some other feedback. So by adding in other conditions in there, we can provide better feedback. And I would not suggest doing something like this. I would just leave that blank if this is how I was going to do it. Again, watch a feedback video to learn more about that part of things. So this one had the X and Y split up, made it easier. Let's go on to this next one where they're together. Because they're together, we need to use something called parse ordered pair. Parse ordered pair takes the two of them that's together, kind of like they're in the same sentence, and breaks it up for the computer so that it knows this is one thing and this is the other thing. Kind of like this is one word and this is another word. It's not all jumbled together. So if we go in, we've already got the read only true there. In here, we do want to do a check, but we're not quite ready for it yet because we're not broken up into an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. So we're going to start off with a name of something like my pair one to parse the ordered pair. You can parse different things, but we're going to work on ordered pair. And where does it come from? It comes from this component, and it's got to be cell content this time because the computer doesn't understand that they're both numbers. They're all jumbled together with a comma in between, and that gets confusing. And so where in the table is it? Let's see. It is 1, 2. And we have 2 points, so let's just copy and paste that. And let's say my pair number 2 is going to come from the next cell, which would be 2, 2. And although it would be really nice to jump ahead to the check, we've got it so that we can use them separately, but we're not quite ready to check anything yet because we need like an X coordinate, a Y coordinate, that sort of thing. So we've broken them up, but then they're sort of in outer space waiting to be used. So let's say that X1 is going to be my first X, which is going to come from my pair 1, and it's going to be the X coordinate of it. And let's go one step further and just say that this is going to be a numeric. Let me cut this out so it shows up. This is a numeric value of that. That way it goes from being content to being a number, which is going to be way more helpful in the check. So we want that for the X, and we also want the same thing for the Y. But then we also want it for the next X and Y. So this is going to be my pair 2, and it's the second X. And this one's going to be a Y on the second one. And so that's going to be Y2. When we're doing the notation here, it's not in a graph, so we're not doing the subscript, just X and 1, just like I would with subscript. All right, so let's try to check some stuff. So let's say that X1 equals, I'm forgetting 5, and Y1 equals 2, and X2 equals 0, and Y2 equals -3. All right, so that check should be all set. And we can now use a correct sync to tell it that if it passes check, please mark it correct. So let's go back here, and in a point format, we're going to write down the answers for both. And if they're both correct, we'll get that check mark. You can see that before I wrote that one down, it was marking it wrong, and that's because it has to be completely 100% correct to be marked with a check mark. So we can then give feedback based on that. And again, I'll sort of cheat with the feedback a little bit. This is table 2 and feedback 2, content sync. When table 2 has a script of check, great job, and otherwise don't say anything. And let's check that out. Let's check that out. Hear my kids into those. 0, -3, and we're getting that message again. So now we've got one more to take a look at. And this one is pretty much the same thing, but again, with the points going into math inputs. So on this slide, we've already got the read-only true here. We've got some directions. Here's input 3A, that's the first one, and input 3B. And so for this first input, we're going to do my pair 1 equals this. I'm starting off wrong. We want to parse it first. Parse ordered pair of this, and we have to call it LaTeX because it's a jumbled mess. It's not one number all by itself. And once they parse it, we're going to use the x. So x1 equals the my pair 1 dot x, and I often forget this. So we want to turn it from LaTeX into numeric value. So I'm just going to cut that and put numeric value first and then put that in. That'll switch it on over for us. And almost the same thing here, but we'll change that one to a y. All right, so now we have an x and it's a number, and we've got a y and it's a number, and we're ready to use those. So we're going to put it into our check and say that x1 is going to be 5 and y1 is going to equal 2, and mark it correct if it passes the check. And if I go to preview, it's going to be looking over here for correctness. So let's just mark this as read only true, and we can see how it's working so far, but we will want to obviously go back and fix that after. 5.2. So it is marking it correct for this. So we basically can just copy paste the code from point A to point B and then just make a few adjustments, like the point is now 0, -3. So going back here, I'll take all of this. I'm going to go into input for the second one, put the same stuff in. This time I'm going to call it my pair 2 and x sub 2 and y sub 2, although they're not sub. My pair 2 is here, and these are going to be 2's, and my point is now 0, -3, and everything else is ready. So if we go back here, 5, 2, notice that it's not correct yet. It's a dot, meaning nothing's wrong, but it's not finished. So let's now finish 0, -3. And now we're getting the check mark. The student doesn't have to hit the submit button for this to work, but you can. And we can put a note in, where to go, there it is, at the end, feedback. Now you could do this as like feedback 3A and say, great job, your first point is correct, and then do another box and do feedback 3B and great job, this second point is correct. I'm just going to lump it all together for this into a content sync. So when, let's see, input 3A dot script check and input 3B dot script check. So when the first one's correct and the second one's correct, then say great job. Otherwise, say nothing. And again, we could really improve upon that feedback using buttons and all sorts of different things, but that at least gives us something for today. And again, let's test it out. 5.2, no check mark, no feedback. Put in 0, let's do just 3 instead of -3. We get an incorrect, we get no feedback. Switch this to -3 like it should be. We get the check mark, we get the feedback. So that's it for ordered pairs.